Yeah. Yeah, I'm recording my phone call. Yeah. Hold on. I'm smoking this cigar. It's brown. So it would be no way of strangers accusing me of illegal street drugs, you know. Exactly. Yeah. I don't know. Oh, you seen the videos? Exactly. I don't know. I don't know them. It was strangers, you know. Yeah, some stranger from outside of my marriage, you know. A stranger who was never married to me had used the identity of my own personal marriage license certificate, you know, and had came inside of my marriage license household. You know, a stranger had came inside of my marriage license household and sexually abused me. And it's crazy, you know, because a stranger abused me, and you know, my character of being a mental health patient ever since elementary school, with a lot of evidence from a lot of doctors and clinics and hospitals since elementary school of me being a mental health patient, and in middle school and in high school. And you know, it was way after high school when I got a marriage license certificate in the year of 2004. And you know, I saved my virginity for the purpose of being married to one female spouse only ever in life. So, you know, when a stranger invaded my marriage license certificate household and sexually abused me, I never knowed them. And you know, being a mental health patient, you know, well, I don't know if you know, because, you know, being a mental health patient is my character of since elementary school. I ask you a question then. Put it this way. If you yourself had a marriage license certificate of claiming being married, you know, and a stranger was using the identity of your own personal marriage license certificate claiming being married to you, and you was inside of your marriage license household, you know, being the head of the household, and a stranger looking very similar or the same, very similar of being your wife, the person claiming being married to you, you know, if it was a stranger and the stranger was inside of your household claiming being married to you, and then was having sex with you, and you thought the stranger was your wife because the stranger was using the identity of your marriage license certificate inside of your household, or you was the head of the household, and then the stranger ran away, stealing the identity of your marriage license certificate, using the name of the person who was claiming being your wife. It seems you would feel crazy. Exactly. And not even saying any names, because a stranger, you know, not knowing the name of the stranger, with no way of saying names, because a stranger, it's like you would have no way of using the stranger's personal information, because exactly, if a stranger, being a stranger, and you not knowing the name of the stranger, all you can say is a stranger sexually abused you, and a stranger was using the marriage license certificate identity inside of your household where you was the head of the household. Exactly. So what happened to me? A stranger, yes. I don't know them. And it's crazy, you know, because, you know, a stranger claimed having 3 children, you know. A stranger claimed having 3 children. You know, I don't know them. I don't know the 3 children. The 3 children are strangers. Exactly. Yes, that's what I'm saying. The 3 children, strangers, because, you know, the 3 children don't know me. And, you know, so there is no name because of them being strangers. There's no way of using the personal information of the 3 strangers' children, or the 3 strangers claiming being children, because, you know, there's no way of using the personal information of strangers, because exactly, if strangers are strangers and I don't know them, I don't know the name of the strangers, and, you know, It's crazy. What would be did about it? What do I think? I don't know. You know, they say, you know, the strangers have no way of, you know, knowing me, because the story the strangers told is not the same story of my life, you know. Because if the strangers knowed me, the strangers, you know, would know. I was the head of the household when I was 18 years old, you know. And I had a job working at a thrift store. Exactly. And I had a job working at the Pepsi drink place. And, you know, for a long time, a 12-hour shift, you know, part-time, you know, because, you know, being on disability from a claim of a car accident from when I was 12 years old, you know. Exactly the same way, you know, strangers, when I was 12 years old, I was running down the street, you know, from what appeared being two girls interested in doing a threesome of 6 with me. And I said no, because of, you know, I never had sex outside of the identity of what my marriage license certificate says my marriage is, because of, you know, believing in the God of, you know, all the churches said, you know, all the churches would be preaching of saving sex, you know, virginity for the purpose of being married, you know. So I never had sex outside of the identity of what my marriage license certificate says my marriage is, you know. Speaking of myself personally, you know, because I don't know those strangers or, you know, so there's no way of using the personal information of strangers if I don't know them. Exactly. It was just crazy because, you know, it was like the strangers have no way of, you know, claiming of knowing me, because, you know, if the strangers know me, then they would know I had my first job when I was 14 years old, you know, with evidence of, you know, I think they said cheek stubs, had routing numbers, and something about taxes or something. It would be evidence of I had a job when I was 14 years old. Yes, he was in the summer of the 8th grade. No, I didn't go to the prom. A girl had asked me about going to the prom at the beginning of 8th grade. And she appeared as being one of the prettiest, most beautiful girls in the school. You know it, you know she was dark skinned, tall. I think she had different color eyes. She had a very strong 6 vibe, and you know, since I was sexually abused, you know, ever since in elementary school, you know, being the youngest inside of the household I was in, I felt weird about 6, you know, because, you know, the 6 stuff did to me felt wrong. And I didn't understand. And then, you know, once I got older, it seemed I felt wrong because, you know, since being the youngest inside a household with the character of saving my virginity for the purpose of being married to one female spouse only ever in life, then I think I felt weird about 6 because if all the 6 stuff was sexual abuse did to me, being the youngest inside of a household, then, you know, all I thought of 6 then felt wrong and bad because of it being sexual abuse did to me. And I never had voluntary sex outside of the identity of my marriage license certificate at all. Yes, I was taught 6 means going all the way. What does it mean? Going all the way? They say going all the way means, you know, if my private parts was inside of the mouth or butt or womb of a person, and going all the way would mean if wet stuff came out of my private parts inside of the other person. And they said if I was too young, going all the way would mean if while being inside of the other person, finishing the job of getting the feeling of, you know, what they say is an orgasm, or getting a nut, or getting the thrill of claiming, you know, being a person who did it to somebody else with it being true, you know. Yeah, but that's what they say. That means with it being true means if a person was bragging, you know, it's like if a stranger, you know, was bragging of having sex with someone and going all the way, and if the stranger actually had sex and was going all the way, then it would be true. A stranger had sex and had gone all the way, going all the way 6, is what a stranger had did and was bragging about it, and then it would be bad, they say. What's the difference? They say if a stranger was telling lies and saying he had sex with someone, and the truth is he never had sex with the person, and he was telling lies, being mean, and hurting someone's feelings, then it would be different. Because the person, the stranger, would say he never had sex with them. Because it's true. The stranger never had sex with the stranger, whoever those strangers was. Exactly. But it would have to be true. Exactly. Exactly. This is what they told me. They said the stranger could not say the sex did not happen because of the stranger feeling bad. The sex did happen. Exactly. No, I don't know them. Strangers. So no, there's no way of using the personal names or personal information or the personal ages of the strangers if I don't know them. Exactly. I don't know why a stranger sexually abused me. Yes, inside of my own household. Yes, I had my own household when I was 18 years old, you know, because, you know, first chance I got of getting out the household I was abused in when I was a child. But then, as soon as I was 18 years old and found the place of allowing an 18-year-old person paying rent, being the head of the household, I moved out of the household of being abused, and I moved into my own household, being the head of the household, when I was 18 years old, speaking of myself, you know, because I had a job at the thrift store. Yes, it was a thrift store. Yes, it should be evidence of, you know, I think they said paper check with a routing number or a paper trail of when I worked at the Pepsi drink factory in the city of Homewood, Alabama. Yes, years. When I was 18, I worked at the Pepsi drink place in Homewood. And when I was 19. And in the year of 2004, when I got my marriage license certificate, I worked there. And what did I do then? After getting a marriage license certificate in the year of 2004, I got my first apartment, you know, being the head of the household. Yes. It was in the city of Warrior, Alabama. Yes. My own apartment. Yes. Yes. I was the only one with a source of income in the month of May of the year of 2004 when I got my first apartment, and it was in the city of Warrior, Alabama, in the month of May, the year of 2004. Yes, I was the only one with a source of income, you know, working at the Pepsi drink factory and with a temp service in the city of Homewood, Alabama. Yeah, because, you know, it was part-time because of being physically disabled from claims of a car accident and being a mental health patient, you know, working part-time, you know, through no fault of my own, because, you know, I'm not the cause of the mental abuse did to me from being sexually abused ever since elementary school. And I'm not the cause of, you know, a car accident, because, you know, I never caused a car accident. And I drove a lot, you know, from the city of Warrior, Alabama, through the city of Morris, through the city of Kimberly, through the city of Gardendale, through the city of Fultondale, through the city of Birmingham, all the way to the city of Homewood, working at the Pepsi drink factory and working at a lot of different staffing services and temp services, doing part-time jobs with a paper check, with a routing number of evidence of all my works. Exactly. Yeah, and it's why it's crazy, because, you know, whoever those strangers was, you know, tried accusing me, you know, of being a bad person and of crazy stuff strangers had accused me of, which does not match the story of my life, of where I was and where I'm at. Because if the strangers know me, the strangers would know I was the only one with a source of income when I moved into my first apartment, you know, Exactly. It's the same ones in the city of Warrior, Alabama in the year of 2004 after, getting a marriage license certificate in the year of 2004 because I have a marriage license certificate, and, yes, it was the same apartments I lived in August 31st, 2004 and July 18th, 2006. Yes, it was the same apartments in the city of Warrior, Alabama. The same apartments where, I was the head of household, when I first moved into the apartments, being the only one with a source of income when I first moved into the apartments, working part-time at different jobs, driving through all of those cities, from Warrior, through Morris, through Kimberly, through Gardendale, through Fultondale, through Birmingham, all the way to Homewood, for a long time, very hard work, sometimes a 12-hour shift hurting my body and my brain and my mind, all while doing the job of being a husband. But I mean, doing the job of being a husband, never having sex outside of the identity of what my marriage license certificate says my marriage is what I mean by doing the job of being a husband. Yeah, exactly. Working at all of those jobs, never having sex, outside of my marriage with co-workers, all of those years, and, exactly. Yeah, that's what they said. They said, it was no point, the stranger said, it was no point in having sex with co-workers anyway, because if a stranger at a job I was working at was interested in having sex with me, then it would be crazy because, they say if a stranger was the type of person of having sex with people at work with them, strangers at the job and stuff, and then, how would I know if the stranger was having sex with other people at the job if the stranger has the character of hooking up with co-workers and having sex with co-workers? Then, it seems the strangers, would have a different type of sexuality, not for me. Because, since I believe in saving my virginity for the purpose of being married, and I never had sex outside of the identity of what my marriage license certificate says my marriage is. Exactly. I felt bad when a stranger had sexually abused me using the identity of my marriage license certificate. Being a stranger, and I don't know them, And the crazy part about it, the stranger, claimed 3 strange children, you know, children who are strangers, offspring who are strangers. Exactly, because the reason I said children who are strangers, offspring who are strangers, is because exactly, if the strangers know me, the strangers would know I was the only one with a source of income, you know, when I moved into my first apartments in the city of Warren, Alabama, in the month of May, in the year of 2004, being the head household. The same apartments I lived in August 31st, 2004 and July 18th, 2006. And never bothered anyone, you know. Never bothered anyone at all. Exactly. Because, you know, after getting a marriage license in the year of 2004, I never pressed charges, you know. So the strangers have, you know, a way, you know, the strangers have no way of wanting revenge against me, since I never caused any problems to them, whoever the strangers are, or whoever the strangers was, you know. Exactly. I got a marriage license certificate in the year of 2004. And, you know, I said I'm not interested in being a problem for the government, you know, or to the government. So, you know, all the money of court costs and all the work of filing papers, strangers would say cost a lot of time and money and work, is what strangers were saying. Since I was never interested in being a problem, causing strangers extra paperwork and court costs and problems for strangers, I never pressed charges, you know. Yes. After getting a marriage license certificate in 2004, there was never a time in 2004 of me pressing charges. Exactly, because doing the job of being a husband, I got a marriage license certificate in the year of 2004 and never pressed charges at all. Even after a stranger had sexually abused me. Yes, it's very crazy. I don't understand why a stranger would have sexually abused a person, myself, who is a mental health patient, with evidence since elementary school of being a mental health patient, with evidence since middle school of having physical disabilities from claims of a car accident in the year of 1996, which happened after the 6th grade. You know, I was in the 6th grade, and at the end of the school year in the 6th grade, it was summertime, and claims of a car accident in the summer of the 6th grade was said, you know, of what happened. And, you know, I don't know. Oh, in the 7th grade, you know, since claims of a car accident was said, those people inside, you know, those strangers of the household I growed up inside of had used money from a trust fund and used it for others instead of me. And it was the same way. Sometime between the 7th grade and the 8th grade, one of those strangers claiming being part of the household I growed up inside of had sexually abused me again. No, I never asked her, you know, the stranger, I never asked her for doing it to me, whatever she did to me. I don't know why she did it. I don't even know what she did, because it felt wrong, and I tried not thinking about it because of it being a bad thought. And I stayed away from her because of her being a stranger who had sexually abused me. Yes, it was wild. My leg was broke because, you know, between the 7th grade and the 8th grade was after the summer of the 6th grade. And, you know, my leg still has problems. Exactly. No, I don't know them, you know. Being the youngest inside of the household I growed up in, I'm not a witness of when any of them was born, you know. The stranger said it was 3 brothers claiming being brothers inside of the household I grew up in, being older than me. But, you know, I don't know them because I'm not a witness of when any of them was born. And I'm not a witness of when whoever claimed being the mom of those strangers was born. And I'm not a witness of when whoever claimed being the dad of those strangers was born. If those strangers was claiming being the parents of those strangers, and was older than me, then, you know, it seems those strangers was having sex and creating pregnancies and births of offspring way before I was born. You know, if those strangers claim being older than me, and since I am not the cause of those strangers having sex, then it's not my fault. The ideas those strangers had, or the sex those strangers had, you know. It's strange. It's crazy. Yes, it's the same way. October 6th of 2008, I was the only one with a source of income inside of the household. You know, my own household. I was inside of. Exactly, it seems the same way. A stranger sexually abused me is what it seems happened inside of the household I lived in. You know, the same household I lived in. October 6th, 2008, being the only one with a source of income inside of my household, you know. So I made plans of moving from the household I was inside of October 6, 2008. Exactly. I was not interested in being inside of a household if strangers were sexually abusing me, using the identity of my marriage license certificate and if strangers was having sex with other people outside of me, you know. And then, you know, all of that and all of that, then I moved to another household. Yes, it was a house. After I moved from the apartment where I was the only one with the source of income, October 6, 2008, the apartments I stayed in October 6, 2008 was apartments I moved from and then moved into a house. You know, the same way. It was October 6, 2008. I was the only one with the source of income when I moved into my own house. I think it was 3rd Street North in Birmingham, Alabama. And I was the only one with the source of income when I moved into, you know, my own household, being the head of the household, you know, all the time, you know, doing the job of being a husband, you know, even though different strangers from outside of my marriage had sexually abused me. And it seems some of the strangers from outside of my marriage had used the identity of my marriage license certificate and told a lot of lies which does not match the character of myself and does not match the character of the court records of my character of me being the head of the household and the only one with the source of income at those times. I said, you know, yeah, when I moved into my first apartment, being the only one with the source of income in the year of 2004 in the month of May in the city of Warrior, Alabama. Exactly. Yes, it was the same household of where I was living August 31st, 2004 and July 18th, 2006. Yes, and it was the same way. I was the only one with the source of income October 6th of 2008 inside of the household. I was inside of an apartment, you know, being the head of household, you know. And it was the same way, you know, when I moved into the house, exactly 3rd Street North, Birmingham, Alabama. I was the only one with the source of income when I moved in to the house of 3rd Street North, Birmingham, Alabama. Exactly. Yes, you know, after being sexually abused, you know, from people outside of my marriage, you know, strangers outside of my marriage had sexually abused me. I moved from Alabama into the state of Georgia, you know, in the year of, I think, 2014, you know. Exactly. Yes, it's the same way, you know. Exactly. Yes, I was staying at hotels, you know. Yes. It was the same way. When I moved to the state of Georgia in the year of 2014, I was the only one with the source of income, you know, being the head of the household. You know, the way it always was. Evidence of being the head of the household, doing the job of being a husband, you know. Exactly. Yes, you know, exactly. Yeah, having a marriage license certificate with the year of 2004 being the date my marriage license certificate has is evidence of a marriage, you know. Yeah. It was 2014 when I moved to the state of Georgia, I think. And, you know, the same way. being the only one with the source of income inside of, you know, my household. No, you know, after years and years of being physically abused and sexually abused and, you know, having mental health patient disabilities and physical disabilities from being abused, you know, when I moved to Georgia, I never worked at any of, you know, those types of places that I worked at before. So how did I get my... Oh, you know, yeah, what I mean by being the only one with the source of income when I moved to the state of Georgia means, you know, letters would be from Social Security and it would say to a Brandon Johnson. So, you know, since the letters said to a Brandon Johnson, then it was my letters, you know, to me, you know, from Social Security. So, you know, speaking of myself personally and the letters to me, you know, being the only one with the source of income inside of my household when I moved to the state of Georgia in the year of 2014. It was the same way in the year of 2015. But, you know, in 2015, the same way in the state of Georgia, strangers from outside of my marriage, you know, it seems sexually abused me and had used the identity of my marriage license certificate. Exactly, strangers. I don't know them. I guess there's no way of using the name of a stranger or the personal information of a stranger or the identity of a stranger if I don't know them because of them being strangers. Then all I can say is strangers had sexually abused me when I was in Alabama and when I was in Georgia. And it's crazy, you know. Exactly. I don't understand why a stranger would have been sexually abusing, you know, myself, since I had a character of saving my voluntary going all the way 6 for the purpose of being married to one female spouse only ever in life, is the character of what my tribe teaches me of, you know, from going to a lot of churches and a lot of preachers had preached of saving sex, you know, virginity, or what they say is doing it and going all the way, you know, for the purpose of being married, you know, because, you know, a lot of strangers made complaints of, you know, strangers had made strangers into single moms or single mothers, and strangers had made strangers into ex-wives or ex-husbands, and strangers, you know, had did stuff with strangers I never did, you know, because I never made anyone into a single mom, you know, or a single mother. I never made a person a single mom or a single mother, because I never had sex outside of the identity of what my marriage life certificate says my marriage is. They say the strangers did wrong because the strangers was someone else's husband. They say the strangers was some stranger's husband, you know, because I don't know them. Or they say the strangers was some stranger's wife, you know, because I don't know them. Or they say the strangers' children was some stranger's children, you know, because I don't know them. Or they say the strangers was some stranger's offspring, you know, because I don't know them. Or they say the strangers was some stranger's pimp, you know, because I don't know them. Or they say the strangers was some stranger's escort or sex worker or prostitute or stripper or hooker, you know, because I don't know them, you know. Strangers. And I never instructed anyone into, you know, being a sex worker, a stripper, a prostitute, a escort, or, you know, those sex crimes, you know. Speaking of myself, speaking of my character, or what I never instructed, you know. So there's no way of, you know, accusing me of, you know, specifically speaking of someone directly or indirectly, and all of that, and all of that. You know, since this phone call is recorded, hold on, I need to say it on camera. I am not speaking of anyone directly. I am not speaking of anyone indirectly. There is nothing to read into. I am not talking in a code. And this is not a secret message. I record this phone call in this video being evidence, so there is no way of strangers telling lies, of saying stuff not true, of where I was and where I am and what I said. Exactly. Hmm? No, I don't know them. Yes, I'm in the city of Macon, Georgia now. Inside of my marriage license certificate household. You know, the same way. The only one with the source of income, you know, inside of the household. Hmm? Exactly. Yeah, the strange children or the strange offspring have the character of strangers, it seems. Why I think is because if strangers know me, then strangers would know what I told you. Or, you know, strangers would say, hey, it's the guy who saved his voluntary going all the way 6, you know, his virginity for the purpose of being married. Hey, it's the guy who, you know, had his own place ever since he was 18 years old, being the head of the household. Hey, it's the guy, you know, who had his own apartment when he was 20 years old, you know, being the head of the household. Hey, it's the guy who did all of that work and drove all of those places in different cities, you know, around all those strangers and never had sex outside of the identity of what his marriage life certificate says his marriage is. Hey, it's the guy, you know, who, you know, had his own place, you know, way before August 31st, 2004, way before July 18th, 2006, and way before, you know, October 6th, 2008, you know. And he had jobs working, you know, part-time with disabilities and all of that stuff after being abused so much, you know. He worked through it all, you know, and never pressed charges. Because he was never the cause of strangers' problems. It's what strangers would say, I think, if strangers know me. So, you know, I think it's strangers because, you know, they say, you know, if I was at a court date and all of the evidence of where I was at, you know, my own household and all of that, and me being the head of the household, and all of the evidence of where I worked and the check stubs and all of that, you know, they say if the strangers are not telling the truth of it, then the strangers was strangers. And I am telling the truth of saying the strangers was strangers, you know. Because my character matches the character of what I say, of where I was at. And, you know, I always told, you know, with video evidence publicly showing of, you know, to make a long story short, I was sexually abused from strangers in the state of Alabama, and I was sexually abused from strangers in the state of Georgia. And I never voluntarily had sex outside of the identity of what my marriage life certificate says my marriage is. And I think the sexual abuse happened to me because of a stranger who had the character of being a pimp, had strangers being sex workers, strippers, prostitutes, hookers, and escorts, and he instructed them, you know, the stranger instructed the strangers into sexually abusing me. And it seems the strangers had used the identity of my personal marriage license certificate, you know. And, you know, since all of the evidence of, you know, the households of me being the head of the household, you know, and since all of the evidence of all of those times of me being the only one with a source of income, you know, those times in those households, then they say, you know, those strangers had invaded my household and had sexually abused me using the identity of my personal marriage license certificate, you know, speaking of myself personally, because, you know, speaking of myself, because I don't know them strangers. I don't know them, you know. So, you know, they say, you know, it's crazy, you know. And I said, I'm crazy, you know, being a mental health patient ever since elementary school. So, you know, I have no interest in, you know, going to clubs or bars or groups, you know, of strangers. Exactly. Because, you know, being a mental health patient with the history of strangers sexually abusing me, then I'm tired of being a fool, getting sexually abused from strangers, taking advantage of me being a mental health patient. And since I don't know them because of them being strangers, then, you know, there's no way of, you know, using personal names or information of strangers if strangers were strangers, because strangers have no evidence of knowing me. If strangers are not saying, you know, Brandon was the only one with the source of income when he moved into, you know, his first apartments in the year of 2004, you know. Way before August 31st, 2004. Way before July 18th, 2006. Way before October 6th, 2008. And, you know, it was the same way. October 6th, 2008, Brandon was the only one with the source of income. And, you know, it was the same way. After August 6th, 2008, Brandon moved inside of a house. He had his own house, being the head of household at 3rd Street North in Birmingham, Alabama. Brandon told of being sexually abused in the state of Alabama, and Brandon moved from Alabama to the state of Georgia sometime in between 2014 and 2015. You know, it's what strangers would have said, you know. I think if strangers know me, you know, it's the same way. Strangers would have said, Brandon, you know, the same way. Was the only one with a source of income when he moved to the state of Georgia in the year of 2014, being the head of household, having a marriage license certificate of evidence of a marriage. So, you know, it seems strangers told the lies and had targeted me and had sexually abused me because strangers from outside of my marriage, I don't know why strangers had abused me. No. I never went outside of my marriage at all in the state of Georgia, starting fights, you know, with anyone who identified as a stranger outside of my marriage. Which is why I don't understand why strangers had came inside of my marriage license household and sexually abused me. They said there's no way of getting revenge against a person who, you know, against a stranger who never did anything to you or who was never the cause of it. So, no, I'm a stranger, and if the strangers are strangers, and I'm not the cause of the strangers, you know, voluntary choices, then they say, you know, it's crazy. If a stranger made bad choices and a stranger ruined their own life, there's no such thing as revenge against me because I'm not the cause of the stranger's problem. Exactly.